Looks like we're up.
Wow, look at that, Michael. We're alive and in living color. Good morning. Good Monday morning to you, Michael.
And good morning to you. I see your shirt says McClatchy. Who's McClatchy?
McClatchy is a high school in Sacramento, California. That
Oh, your family
my family,
baseball
yes, my
stars.
nephew godson plays basketball for. So um, he honored me with this shirt. I have not yet honored him this season with going down there and watching it. Well, actually, no, I did go earlier in the season. Okay, forget that. I haven't gone this year yet, but I did go earlier in the season to watch a game. And the young man is a good basketball player.
Well, I'm with
I don't know if
Boston
that's
this
gonna,
year.
yeah, I don't know if that's gonna factor into his college decision, which he's got to make. But he's a damn good basketball player. And so anyway, that's why I'm wearing McClatchy. Why? What do you got on your head? California. Why are you wearing California? What are you in California or something like that?
I'm in California. I'm from California. I will die in California. Chances are, and I will not be
Yeah.
buried in California.
Let's hope. Let's hope not for a while. But and I don't know.
California is bound to last longer than I will. It's just the way these things go. You have to accept
Well,
it.
there was a time we didn't think that, though. There was a time when people thought that California was just going to break off into the ocean, right?
There's still some theories that include that. I don't buy into them. Although we did have an earthquake. Saturday morning or Sunday morning? I think it was Saturday morning, just before 10 o'clock. A 3.5 located in El Sereno and South Pasadena, not far from us. And it was like somebody walked up behind you and kicked your chair or kicked the couch. It was just like a boom. And the cats looked around and said, "What the hell was that?" And I tried to explain it to them, but the explanation went
Yeah,
on
they're
too
not
long.
really. They're not really. They
They
just
wanted to
know what
know
happens.
they wanted to know what was that, and then just tell me so I can get on with my day. I don't need a scientific explanation. And oddly enough, I turned to local news to see if anybody was up. Channel 5 was on the air with their local news. That's the independent station, KTLA. And it was the end of their broadcast, and they were so devoted to their happy talk sign off that they didn't have time to even mention it, which is a missed
Well,
opportunity.
they might not have known
There's
it happened, right? I
there's
mean,
channel 2, there's channel 4, there's channel 5, there's channel 7, 9, and 11, all doing local news. But at that hour, only channel 5 was on the air with local news, and they had a scoop had they run with it. Well, I think in LA or anywhere in California for that matter, and this is maybe true for Seattle, they've got that phone number to call. The gal at Caltech is the aftershock expert. She's the earthquake freak. She is the top scientist in the world,
yeah, we have
understanding
the UW laboratory up here that
how
does.
it was, where it was, how deep it was, where was it located, where was it centered, reports of damage, and then that's about all you got, unless there's a major quake where you then have to say, what's your neighborhood? Do you have lights? Do you have power? Did the freeway come down? Anyway, none of that happened on Saturday morning. They were too close to the end of their broadcast. They didn't mention it, and only the LA Times actually covered it
And what magnitude was it?
online. 3.5.
Well, there's some people that say don't call me until it's a four. So maybe that's the doctrine in television news down there now. This is we'd
I
rather
don't
put
think
a
you
car
can't.
chase on the TV.
That's true. If a 3.5 versus a car chase, the car chase wins every time. If you can do them both together, if you get the box in the lower right hand corner covering the earthquakes, and then do the full screen shot of the car on the 101, that's that's a way to keep your audience happy. That's a way to keep them glued to the screen. And I called my daughter, who lives in the San Fernando Valley, which she calls the Feral Valley, and in the Feral Valley they didn't even feel it. So it depends where you were that day. I got somebody kicked my chair and moved the couch But in the San Fernando, and I'm in the San Gabriel Valley, but in the San Fernando Valley, uh, was not, it did not register on the inner workings of the individual Los Angeles citizens. They didn't feel it, they didn't react to it. And I don't know how they picked up on it later on, probably just in print media. But I thought
Well,
that was interesting that it was so localized that people around me did not feel it.
yeah, well, again, I kind of think at some points, I don't know, I'm not down there, so I don't know, but for sure, but it seems to be that, unless it's a five or a certain number, I don't know what that number is. It's like, we move on with our day. Or if there's some kind of injury or a freeway is closed or something like that, it just seems that much like school shootings and house fires, it's joined that legion of news. I call them the off the rack stories. That you could basically take a piece of videotape off the rack and write the particulars of that actual event around it, but you could be showing them a house fire in Ventura, but nobody knows the difference unless you
Um,
live in the house. I mean, it's just
there's some truth to that, of course, but for a broadcast outlet to actually do that would be in violation of way too many standards to be mentioned. I remember
standards
in
in
I, re-
broadcasting.
I remember in the afternoon news we would have. Well, I remember. I'm old enough to remember the CBS broadcast standards that were issued to people who cover the news. And those were not just standards that were interesting for you to read. They had to be followed. They had to be honored. They had to be uh, adhered to.
Yeah, I actually think I
And
have a copy of those somewhere
Frank
um,
Stanton
in my
wrote those.
stuff. We, but let's face it, who adheres to that anymore?
The New York Times does,
Yeah, that's why I always say, if when you get a story that you don't believe
or
or
that you
that
do
looks
believe.
suspicious to you, there are certain media outlets that have a certain standard of you have to show it to somebody before you put it up on the air. It's not some
Reuters.
guy in some country just putting it up on the air for the hell of it. And that's part of the big problem of what is wrong today in media is that there's no accountability. You can put it up as a Twitter, you can put it up as a Facebook post, you can put it up as anything, and you know, depending on how many followers you have, people, if you say it, will believe it. A certain amount of people will believe it because it's what they want to believe. So I don't know what broadcast standards are anymore.
Well, let's take a look at Fox broadcasting standards on their network or Newsmax, where their standard says we can take any story we want about Pizza City or McClatchy High School, and we can change the who, what, where, when, and how to suit us. We can broadcast it as if it was real, as if it's happened, as if it's current, and if it's true, and then move on with our day. And what are you going to do about it? We lied to you about Pizza Town. We lied to you about McClatchy High School. We lied to you about the earthquake. And we'll have more lies to tell you at the top of the hour. But right now, here's a spot about Ted's plaque psoriasis. And when Ted's through telling you about his plaque psoriasis, we'll be back with another lie. And it could be a lie about Pizza Town, but if something else comes up in the meantime, like a earthquake or not an earthquake, there was no earthquake today, but we wish there had been. So we're going to say there was. And maybe there will be one tomorrow. In fact, we could look forward to it. Tomorrow at 10:35 a.m. Pacific time, there will be an earthquake. We've scheduled it. And if there's not, don't blame me. We said there was, and just because you didn't feel it doesn't mean there wasn't an earthquake. Now back to Pizza Town. Our Pizza Town story is that Pizza Town was destroyed today by Israeli commandos. It was? No, but we say it was. And what's the difference? Well, I think you're going to enjoy the story about how it was destroyed better than the one that there was no shooting whatsoever. The one that we're going to tell you about how Pizza Town was destroyed by Israeli commandos is fabulous. We have a picture of a house fire in Ventura. We have the overhead shots of the 6 Year War and the tanks going across the Egypt border. We got all that stuff that we can put together. It has nothing to do with Pizza Town. It has nothing to do with Israeli commandos. Those are lies that we're telling you. But we're teasing them, and it's really working well for us. And we're charging more for our plaque psoriasis spots as a result. Welcome to the news. Welcome to Fox.
Well, do you think Fox is the only one that does that, or the right wing, or do you think that the left wing or the news outlets that tend to travel to the left side of the line do that as well? I think they do it as well.
Give me an example.
Now, I think that the left leaning ones tend to tell you the truth more than the right leaning media outlets. I would definitely say that the truth is there. I think more on that side than it is on the Fox side.
They're telling you the truth, but they're lying about it.
No, I just think that they are slanting it in their way. I think that I'll take, for example, the Donald Trump verdict last week. CNN did everything in their power to mention that Donald Trump was a convicted felon 1,000,000 times. You could have played a drinking game. Every host that came on had to. It was almost like in the script that they were handed, in the show notes that they were handed. It said, make sure we get that Donald Trump is a convicted felon 35 times in your 2 minutes on the air in your segment.
And
okay, and that is news. I mean, he is now a convicted felon. Consequently,
you think mentioning it slants the news?
I think that pounding it into people's heads that many times in that short of space definitely takes people, and it reinforces the idea that he is a convicted felon. And listen, I really have nothing against it, but
how many convicted felons since George Washington? How many of our presidents have been convicted felons?
But you don't have to tell me 15 times in a half hour.
Or not at all. I don't have to tell you at all, actually, if depending
on.
No,
I don't think you should not tell me at all, but I don't think that every 2 or 3 minutes you have to drive home that point that he is now a convicted felon. Now, again, I think it's a sad day for America what happened. I think that any president or anybody that we put our trust into that people, a large number of people put their trust into, that gets convicted of a crime, is abhorrent. It's horrible. They're working for us. And we put a certain amount of trust in. Just like I think that cops that get convicted of a crime, there's a higher standard. City workers that there's a higher standard. Or should be. But I think there's a way that you tell the news, and there's a way that you push the news to fit your thinking, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously. It still gets done by both sides.
They're both fine people on both sides, huh?
No, I guess there are fine people, but nobody that's doing the news is still. Why would you even bring that up? That now associates everything of the Charlottesville idiocy that, or should I say, the preview of what was coming for the next 3.5 years from Donald Trump. So I don't even know how you would relate that to what I was saying.
Well, it sounds like you were trying to be fair by saying the right-wing media is lying to you, but the left-wing media is distorting the news.
I think that's true.
So they're the same.
I think that's true. You don't think that the left wing, that the leftist media distorts things to fit their agenda as well, or to get ratings?
So the example that we've asked us to consider. That is, someone who has news standards that they adhere to. The New York Times adheres to those standards. One of the few papers in the world that still does. And does that make it what kind of news outlet, leftist or rightist?
I think it's probably as centrist as you're going to find in America today. The New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post. I think that those papers, those media outlets, I think that CBS News does a pretty good job on their cable channel. I think NBC on their cable channels. But again, we have to separate out. If you're watching CNN, you're not watching news, you're watching entertainment. If you're watching MSNBC, you're watching entertainment tailored for liberals. You're not watching news, you're watching opinion.
Well, but who broadcasts television news then?
Well,
Just
I think
television
I
news.
think I just said CBS, NBC, I think do a pretty good job on their cable and streaming outlets.
And Fox doesn't have a nightly news, do they? That they broadcast to their own stations.
I don't think they do. No, I don't. I
they
think
do.
all of their stuff is local, but they do have a streaming channel, and I have found it to be biased. They do have a thing called Fox Now.
I've never seen that.
That's a news channel,
Mm-hmm.
and while it's less, there's not as much opinion in there as you would get if you turned on Hannity or any of those shows. It's still written in the almost in the Sky News from Australia style, where
You ever tried the BBC on big international stories?
yeah, I tried the Canadian news. I don't have to. I mean, I could go to the BBC, but I try. If you go just north of the border here, you can get it over the air.
I can't get that.
Yeah,
on my
if
cable.
you can get it if you stream it, but if you, but I think that they do a very good job. It's a bit boring, but it doesn't seem to have an agenda. Where I think if you watch CNN, if you watch Fox, if you watch Newsmax, what's the other one? The new conservative one that's there. News. Those shows,
I can't think of it.
yeah, it's anyway. Those particular outlets have a bias. CNN and MSNBC mostly to the left, and the others from far right. It's not even that they have a middle. I mean, but look at the people that work there. Look who has shows there. Trey Gowdy. And what's his name? That the spank boy, Trump spank boy that used to run the economy. Kudlow. There's a definite bias to what they're doing. And
the guy who got fired from CNN for passing on news to his brother, Como.
Oh, Cuomo.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, but I see his promos every once in a
Yeah,
while.
he's on. I think he's on Newsmax.
Mm-hmm.
He's on one of those stations. He's got a nightly show. He's had it for over a year.
Is he centrist, or has he gone over to the dark side?
I think he's more I think he's more centrist where he is now. I think he leaned a little bit more to the left on CNN. But I think he wants to work, and he knows what his audience is now. See, that's the thing, Michael, is they're not giving you news. We call it news, but it's not news. It's entertainment. It either reinforces your point of view, it tells you you're right, it presents the facts that are going to make you feel good, so you will continue to tune in. and listen or watch. And they will continue to be able to claim that they have more audience and that they charge more for their ad rates. You're exactly right. The the price of whatever their advertising, the spot price goes up because they have more listeners. After the trial, I think Fox had like 2.9 million listeners, which is a huge number for cable. So that's that, and from that, people put up their postings on social media. And now that we hear that the numbers are in double digits of people who get their news either from X or from Facebook or from YouTube or from these different social media outlets, not hard to twist things and slant things the way you want to twist them. It's easier today than ever. All you have to do is have the ability to have enough people go online and post it and make it a trending story, or have a bot do it.
Or remember that during the 20s and 30s, the Hearst newspapers across the country slanted the news to their own liking and made it headlines from coast to coast based on the needs and the emotional day that William Randolph Hearst was having.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't anything new. It's just that you had to hide it better back then. you know? But this is anybody who's seen, the movie The Fountainhead or Citizen Kane or these, many of these other movies that show that side of the media business in the 30s and the 40s knows that. I mean, it's listen, they're in it to make money. And the way they make money
and to win hearts and minds.
By either making people feel like they're part of something so they'll come back to you because they feel comfortable there, or you have valuable information that nobody else has.
A scoop, an exclusive.
Well, that's why. Who was the guy who was the columnist? Oh man, his name is escaping me now. I think he was in the Washington Post. Jack
Armstrong.
No, Jack something. But this guy seemed to have political scoops. Not Don Van Atta, but Jack. I don't know. I can't remember his name. But this guy I remember growing up that this guy had his finger inside of everything that was going on in Washington. You could look at his column every day and he'd have something there that nobody else had. That was news a day or two or three later in other newspapers. He had it first.
And he was syndicated.
Yeah. But those, when it comes to entertainment, Walter Winchell, Hedda Hopper, Dorothy Kilgallen, those columnists that had information before anybody else. But these days, newsrooms don't do that anymore. They don't have beat reporters. I mean, Christ, they hire somebody with a camera to go out with his cell phone and shoot fires at night. And so they pay him $50 a pop for every video they send in. There's no journalists out there anymore, or very few.
Well,
when you go to a radio newsroom, you're rewriting press releases. So, I mean, you have to do your own research these days. And you have to find reliable places. As I said at the top of the show, there are very few reliable outlets.
Where would you go, for instance, on a very controversial story like Hunter Biden? Where would you go to get the facts of that case? Where would you go to
my go-to is always the New York Times. I have found over the years that they have less of a bias in their reporting. Now, again, you don't go into the opinion columns, you go into the news columns. They still spend the money on the journalism. They have people like Maggie Haberman out there that goes out and, I mean, they earn their money.
And you have to write to New York Times standards, which are there's a style to the New York Times. Mr.
Yeah,
Riccici would not they wouldn't call him Vinnie or just Riccici. It would have to be Mr. Riccici, and all the references to
right.
the
You can look, you can actually go on their website. I think they have their standards posted on the website, if I'm not mistaken. I think I read them there once,
that
or
might be
maybe more than
true.
once.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure.
Standards and style.
Standards and ethics. The guidelines below detail the standards to which we hold ourselves accountable. Ethical journalism, a guidebook, a handbook of values and practices.
The
So I don't know if every newspaper has that. I know there are other newspapers that follow the New York Times. They have kind of written the book on this, and the Seattle Times follows the New York Times
style.
style. They call people Mister, or at least they. I don't read the Seattle Times that much anymore. Uh, but they certainly, the president, Mister, Trump is not Trump. He is President Trump. No matter what, he is. It's not Biden. It's President Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I think they may have had to alter that over the past few years to indicate which one is president and which one isn't. Because one thinks he is, and one does, and one knows he is. He has a piece of paper that says the people of this country elected you. Well, they elected electors who went to a place and elected you, president.
One of the things that would make it easier, and it's harder for the reporters because they need producers and fact checking units to do it. But if you cover a candidate making a speech and your candidate is Trump and he says a variety of things, is it the reporter's duty to say, item one on Mr. Trump's list of problems for the country today is the hedgehog attacks in Omaha, Nebraska. The New York Times has independently verified that there were no hedgehog attacks, and he's referring to something that he has invented. And it's a campaign issue that he has mentioned at several stops. But in fact, we have determined that there were no hedgehog attacks in Omaha. There never have been, even though he continues to say it. It's harder for news organization to do it that way because if you're doing the who, what, where, when, and how, who, Trump, what, lied in his speech today. How do you know he lied in his speech? We checked it with Omaha. There were no hedgehog attacks. He keeps saying there were. He's mentioned it at 4 stops today. But we have independently determined that those are mentions but not facts. Something that Mr. Trump has become infamous for.
There's a guy who makes his living at CNN, and I'll bet you he makes a pretty nice living doing it too. And his job is just to fact check Trump. Every time Trump comes on and does a speech, CNN now feels that they have somebody has to watch that speech, go down that list, and fact check everything that's in that speech because the guy lies so much. I mean, presidents lie to us. I don't think any president has not lied to us. It's part of the job. They all lie.
But to say they all lie also puts them in the same group so that they all lie the same. Their lies are not.
No, it's some lie about big things, some lie about little things. But I think part of the job is you have to dress things up to serve the American people. If you're the president, it's not just going out there and boom, 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 boom. which
So lying is a service that the president provides to us to protect us from the truth.
I think that part of the office is, I think now there's lies that are, first of all, lies are never good because the truth always comes out, especially in this day and age where there's recordings and media that record everything. But you can't always be. I don't know if you're president, if you could always be. Could you be truthful 100% of the time?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that you could,
I don't know the
because you know
truths that
things
they're.
that other people don't.
Well, that's like saying the truth. You can't have secrets. You can have secrets, and whether you tell the truth about them
Right. And part of
is
the presidency is knowing no secrets, right?
yes.
Part of being the president is knowing, I don't know, let's take Osama bin Laden, for example. Part of being the president is knowing where Osama bin Laden was, keeping
He's
track.
in
You
Rio de
probably got to,
Janeiro. He's in Rio de Janeiro. He's got a dry cleaning store.
right. Whatever, wherever he is, part of your daily routine as president is knowing where he is. At that point was knowing where he is so you could execute an attack on him at some point and kill him, right? No trial, no nothing. The idea was try to get him without wiping out a neighborhood, without wiping out a city, without whatever it was.
And don't forget to
Now,
pick up your dry cleaning when you're there.
right, get your stuff before the attack. It'll be cleaner.
Yes.
I'm sure that over the course of the first years of his presidency, up until the time that the Navy SEALs went in and killed Osama bin Laden, that
Allegedly. We never saw the video.
right. I guess you could, if you want to believe that we didn't kill him, although he hasn't surfaced anywhere since.
He hasn't been doing much. He hasn't been doing much since then. Right.
Right. You haven't. I mean, usually you saw him every once in a while, sitting around, a table and, kind of gazing off into space after smoke. But
Sitting in a cave with an automatic weapon, making
right.
pronouncements.
But I would have to venture a guess that every day that Barack Obama was president of the United States, or most days, he probably knew where Osama bin Laden was.
Had an
Right?
educated guess. We could make a pretty good guess.
Got intelligence reports. Well, we know he's moved to Afghanistan, or we know he's moved to Ashkrakistan, or wherever he was moving around to, whichever stand he was in that day.
Astrakazan?
Ashkrakistan.
Oh, that's next to it. Okay, I know where that is.
It's down the street.
Down there.
Yeah. And so I'm also sure that in that period of time before they killed Osama bin Laden, that President Obama was asked, do you know the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden? Why haven't you gotten him yet? Why, especially when Trump started his whole, well, is he a Muslim? Is he a this? Is he a that thing? I'm sure that Steve Doocy, standing in the White House there, probably asked him the question. Or whoever the Fox guy was at that point. It's almost like ask him a question every day, just so we look like we're there. There's always the one guy at the press conference that's always got to raise his hand and ask a question, even if it has nothing to do with what you're there for. He's going to ask the question because he's hoping he's going to get on TV or something. So anyway, I'm sure that President Obama was asked that question. Do you know the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden? He might have just come from a briefing where he had a piece of paper in front of him, and there's Osama standing in front of his dry cleaning store. 2 for 1 today. 2 for 1. So if he's asked the question, he's got to lie about it. He's got to say, I don't know. Our intelligence is monitoring the situation. But he's not going to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Right.
He can't tell you the truth. It's a matter of national security. So a certain amount of lying is built into the job, I think.
Or withholding information. We're not going to talk
Well,
about
yeah.
that.
Now again, you can give me the definitions of what's withholding, what's lying, what's the different phases of
Or
not being
misleading.
completely 100% truthful with the American public.
You can mislead them too. Say he's got a dry cleaning store, but we don't know if it's Hoboken or Schenectady.
And we're not sure, is it a dry cleaning or is it a 1 hour martinizing?
Well, I'm not going if they don't have the martinizing because I need my shirts to be martinized.
Right. But my shirts clearly have been martinized, and I want to continue that practice. And
Yeah.
if old Osama has been a part of that, well, I want to continue to go to that store because in today's world, how my shirts look is much more important than the security of my country.
And Hoboken is convenient to me. Going in and out of work, I can stop there, grab my shirts, and be on my way.
Get out of the Holland Tunnel, you make a right turn, you go up Bergen Line Avenue a little bit, and you're in Hoboken. Stop by at the bakery that Sinatra goes to.
There we go.
Pick up a couple of loaves of Italian bread. You're good. So, I don't know, Michael. I don't know that a president can be 100% truthful 100% of the time. I think there was a survey, and I think they did like some fact checking back to a certain amount on presidents, and I think the biggest, I think prior to Trump, it was like 20% of the time they thought the presidents would be lying about something.
And after the
or not giving you or evading the truth, or not giving you. Trump comes in at like something like 75%.
Oh, I would think higher. I would think higher because
Yeah.
if you ask him what day it is, he can't tell you if it's really Monday. He can't tell you that.
I would bet you that 75% is like a conservative estimate. That's the Fox News estimate. I read an opinion piece this morning because I do look at opinion pieces from different people, different channels, and there's this fairly left-leaning opinion thing that I watch on YouTube, and the headline that they are running today says that Trump claims he never said lock her up.
Right. CNN's running with that story too.
I didn't see it on CNN. I saw it on this Midas Touch.
Saw it on CNN.com.
Yeah, so he's claiming that he never said the words.
Never said it.
Lock her up. I don't know what alternative universe that this guy lives in.
He lives in Trump world.
But I think that it's the same thing. It's that arrogance that got him convicted or helped get him convicted of the charges he was just convicted of. And will probably get him convicted in some of the other cases he has coming up. Because he thinks because he says it, that people automatically believe it's true.
It becomes true. It's not, you don't have to believe it. It just becomes true.
And the only way you can make it come true is to have the power to do that, which the power of the presidency affords him to a certain degree. But you have to do that. You have to, I would think, be able to control the media to scare them into a space where they say, we're going to destroy all the tapes we have of you ever saying lock her up.
Well, there's the George Orwell world where we've been at work with Pan Asia, we've been at war with them, and then you just change it the next day. We have never been at war with Pan Asia.
Right.
We have never done it. And you have a department, the news department that changes the stories. It goes back and changes all the headlines, go back and changes all the reports, alternates all the videotape and features.
You need co-conspirators. That's not one you can carry off on your own, can you?
And if you want to change it again in the future. They'll go back and put the headlines the way they were 20 years ago, change the pictures again, change the video again, and now you have been at war all this time. But you can have it any way you want. Just give us a while to change it, and we'll get it right.
Well, I'm sure that's probably the deal Russia has going on, right?
Sure. They can tell you what
I mean,
you
you
can
could
cover.
either change this videotape or destroy it, or you can fall out the ninth story window of your media empire.
That's one thing about Russian high rises. The window's open.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's by code.
Yeah. They have a different building code.
It's called the Putin clause.
Now,
And no
if you-
fire escape. You ever notice that? Not a
But
fire
there's never-
escape to be found to break your fall.
No fires, too. And no fire department.
Well, you don't need one.
There you have it. Think of the money that you save doing it that way.
Especially if you, if you know the buildings you're going to set on fire ahead of time, you can just cordon off the block and you save millions.
Save a fortune.
You just send all the people that live there off to Ashkrakistan, and you're in good shape. So, yeah, I think you have to look at all media now with a weary eye, and you have to know which outlets you believe are credible, and the outlets that you know are not. Like you and I both know that you can't watch a Fox News update or listen to a Fox News update and believe anything they say.
I think you're absolutely right. And they have no shame about it. They're willing to evade, disregard, and pass on the right all previous news standards about the who, where, when, and how.
Right.
Believe
to
me,
make
if you really cover local news where you have to get the actual story, if you go to Vinnie's house to find out what he did this morning, you can't file it on Cairo or on your news station unless you know the who, what, where, when, and how. Unless you write the lead, unless you file the story. You have to have some facts based on your reporting that make up the spine of the story. Who was it? It was Vinnie. What happened? He was elected president of the local student council. When? Yesterday morning. Why? Well, they have elections every year. That's why. They have to have a leader. Vinnie's the new one. There's simple facts that have to be answered for the spine of the story. And I mentioned local news because, at least in that example, the reporter has to show up at the story not knowing the answer to the who, what, where, when, and how question, not knowing what his lead is, not knowing what the facts are, not knowing what the hook of the story might be.
Yeah. Although we found a way around that too, Michael. And that is the I'm standing in the garden. I mean, I always used to remember, I always saw this in Pittsburgh. I saw it here too when I worked over at Channel 13. They would have, if they didn't have a reporter at the story, maybe they just had a photojournalist down at the story or whatever, they'd put the reporter out on the deck. Or they'd put him in the plaza. Or they'd put him anywhere that wasn't in the studio.
Or like Comedy Central, you put him in the studio standing right next to the anchor, but he's got a different background. And
Well, no, they weren't smart enough to do that. Although I like that because that lets you in on the joke.
Right.
When they do the bumper to go out to a break, they always let you in on the joke. They always pull back, and there's whoever
I'm
the
standing right here. I'm not at the Supreme
right
Court.
There.
What do you think? I'm not, but I said I was. Is that good enough for you? That's fine for me. Thank you.
I love it. I love when they do that but we know not to take them at I don't want to say face value because sometimes they do better reporting than the regular news. But you always have to take Comedy Central stuff with at least a willingness to check it. To go to another outlet and find out exactly what it is. I don't mind that. I know what that is. They don't pretend to be anything else. if you take
No,
them for real news,
they don't pretend. That's the interesting thing. They're being funny. They're slanting the news. They're coming from a different angle to make it funny, to make it amusing, to make it absurd, to make it judgmental. But they don't pretend to do it. That's what they do. Now, Fox News can't help itself. It's pretending to be news. They can't stop pretending that they're doing the news, but they're not. They're doing just what Comedy Central's doing. They just have a different angle on it,
well,
and their pretense that they're doing the news is a cover for what they're really doing.
right. They have somebody in, either he's in that office or some office or somewhere, and he's dictating to the reporters
What their angle is.
what they're here's how you should cover this story. This is what we want out of this story. This is what. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked in a place like that, but I can tell you that it is the worst possible conditions you can work under.
Because your editor
As
tells you, Vinnie, when you get to the story, take this angle. We want this, this, this.
or drop the story.
And the funny thing is, if in reality, that's exactly the way not to do it. You get to the story, and you find out what the angle is. You find out what the who, what, where, when, and how is. You discover these things, and there's been many times, I'm sure, when a news director sends a reporter to a story, hoping to get one thing, and being grossly disappointed because that is not what happened.
Right.
There was not a wolf attack in Monrovia. What was it? It was a big dog. It got away from his owner. The guy was chasing it down the street. Somebody said it was a wolf. But it's not a wolf. It's a German Shepherd who broke out in the backyard, and he was being chased by a bear. So it's a bear and a wolf? No, there was no wolf. It was a bear chasing a dog. That's all there was to it. But that's not what the story said. Well, I know that's what you thought, but that's not what happened. Now, do you want the truth here? Shall we go live at 20? Or do you want to do it your way? And the editor oftentimes has got this idea in his head about what the story's about before you find out what the story's about. And that's a very dangerous position to be in because he's already teased it. Wolf chases bear in Monrovia. Wait a minute, that didn't happen.
Right.
Well,
and the
already
reporter
said
has virtually written the story in his head on his way down to the location in the car. I mean, he could practically do that story without ever writing it down.
You don't have,
because he's already written his lead, and he's written his 10-second stand-up, and he's written his 45-second story.
Yep.
The only thing he needs is the videotape,
which you can't have because that's not what happened. Damn.
Right. So we got to figure out a way to angle it or make it look like it happened. And if you think that stuff doesn't happen, let me tell you from a couple of media veterans, it happens.
Or the guy will say, we told you earlier today about the bear chasing the wolf through Monrovia. Several outlets reported the wolf got away from the bear. But the truth is it was a German Shepherd, and the bear never got him. And he was being chased by his owner, who watched him get out of the yard. And it was all a misunderstanding. There was no bear, there was no wolf. But that was a really good story. We said there was, and we're saying that that was the basis of the story anyway. Remember the story about the bear and the wolf this morning? We told you all about the bear chasing the wolf. Guess what? There was no bear and there was no wolf. It didn't even happen in Monrovia. None of those things happened. And the man who put it straight was, here's Biff Jiggerman from the streets of Monrovia, filling us in on what really did happen.
And the worst offenders of that right now, I think, are the car chase guys. Because they're on there supposing everything.
Do you think he has a gun? We don't know. He could.
Oh, but I've seen it many times where he's come out and the police have to have their guns drawn and they might have to shoot him. And, LA police killed this many people last year or whatever it is. But they're virtually doing play-by-play on their feet.
They're spitballing, yeah.
And, and and I mean, I've watched enough of these things to see it and see who knows what he's doing and what he's not doing. The whole thing is conjecture. Half the time, they don't even know what in the world the guy was even pulled over for in the beginning.
Or they've been on so many freeways they really don't know where he is because all they're seeing is the overhead shot. Could you pull back and let us know where the hell we are here? I think we're on
Yeah.
the 60. We're on the 605 heading to the 710.
The people they need to hire for those jobs are, sports play-by-play guys because they know how to take a little bit of information and make it hum, make it sing. I don't know if all that bouncing around in a helicopter would be good for them, but I'm not getting in a helicopter. That's for sure.
No.
But I mean, so again, like we started off, I think you have to, if you want to be a now, if you just want to be a schlub that doesn't care, well, then you don't really need to know because you're going to vote what your opinion is anyway. They can convict Trump 9 million times of 8 million counts of murder.
And you're never going to report it.
And you're not going to care. You're going to say it's all a lie. You're going to Marjorie Taylor Greene it, no matter what. It's all a lie.
Yep.
It's the media. And you shouldn't believe anything the media says.
Except our station.
Except what we tell you because we're right. We know what we're talking about.
You can trust us. We're with you on this.
And I always say, how can you trust a media outlet that doesn't have a book that says this is how you report the news? This is what you have to fact check. This is what you have to know. You have to have this. You have to have a source. You cannot opine in a story.
Or just say you don't know.
You can't do that. You have to be able. It has to be verifiable because we have standards. We stand for. There's a station in town here. There's a station in town here that their slug line, their logo is "We stand for the truth."
And what station is that?
That's King 5. They no longer have any recognizable media personalities on the air. Everybody looks like they've been recruited out of a high school journalism class. And their old thing is, we stand for the truth. Well, how can you tell us that? Because we told you.
That was the truth.
It was the truth.
When you say we stand for the truth, is that the truth? Not totally and entirely, but for the most part, yeah. Most part.
Well, we got it on good advice from the president that he was telling us the truth.
And some of our reporters are from here, so that helps.
Yeah, we have a few people, and I love when they sell that line. There's a few, there are a few guys here and women that are from here that are on the air. Good Lord Almighty, you wonder how in the world they ever got a job in media because they probably listened to us when they were growing up.
Well, I went to Washington
How in the world,
State.
whatever made you want to get into this?
Well, we don't hire reporters that got their education at Washington State. You have to be a University of Washington graduate to get a job here.
Well, no, actually, a surprising amount of media people here did get their education at Washington State because they have a well-known
program.
Media school. The Edward R. Murrow School is a well-known, not just in Washington, but in the West, just like Syracuse is and Northwestern is back east. CNN, ESPN. When you and I went back to work there many years ago, probably 80% of the people that worked there came from Syracuse.
Yep.
Because that was the premier journalism school on the East Coast.
You graduate from Syracuse, you get an apartment in Bristol, Connecticut, and you're on your way.
Yeah, I mean, you were virtually guaranteed of a job if you went to Syracuse. I don't know if it's still like that now, but it certainly was like that then. So I don't know, Michael. Knowing the truth is not easy. You have to work for the truth these days. It's part of what's wrong with our country is that we're a country that's based on the truth, but where do you find the truth?
Well,
as Johnny Cash once sang, and the lonely voice of youth cries, what is truth?
Well, they ask the question, but they don't answer it. That's the unfortunate part of that song. Or other means of trying to describe the truth, because you don't always know the truth when you hear it.
Very true.
You think it's true. It might be true. It could be true, but you don't know if it's true even when you hear it.
Or you don't, or in many cases, you don't want to know the truth.
Well, I would think that we've got a society right now that can't stand the truth. You can't handle the truth. They can't wrestle with the truth. What would the Trump believers and the cult members do if they suddenly were plugged in to the truth? Everything they've been talking about for the last 8 years goes into stark relief. We've been lied to. A quarter of my life I've wasted on thinking that Donald Trump was telling me the truth, that the people around him were truthful, that the people who love him were truthful, that the people who vote for him are satisfied and happy with the truth. And they'll find out that it was all a lie. The bigger lie, the better. They can't handle that much truth all in one day, so they don't want to hear it. They don't, and they may never hear it.
Richard Pryor used to have a great line about the truth. He did a routine called Stoney at the Barbershop. And, everybody would gather on Saturday afternoon at the barbershop and tell stories. And one of the barbers who used to love to imbibe pretty much said, I'll see if I can clean this up, as you have to do with any Richard Pryor.
True enough. That's true.
He said, me and Stoney, we know each other a long time. Said he tell lies and I tell lies. We complement each other's lies. So I guess the whole point of our conversation today is if you want to know the truth, don't just go to one source that you like. Go find sources that you believe, whether they be BBC, whether they be the Canadian Broadcasting Network, whether they be the New York Times, the LA Times. There are credible news organizations out there. I'm sure that there, besides the New York Times, there are other companies that still adhere to that broadcast manual, that journalism manual that says you check the facts twice, you check your sources twice, you check your credibility of your sources twice, or else the story doesn't go out on the air.
The hardest
or
part
it doesn't go out in the newspaper. It doesn't fly.
Vinnie tells you that the Mets won, and he tells you the score was 5-0. You've got to find somebody else who tells you that the Mets won and the score was 5-0 before you can go with that. You can't run with one source.
Well, oddly enough,
that's one of the hard parts. One of the very
sports is one of the only places where you can actually check the facts quite quickly because it's all kept down on a sheet. As a matter of fact, there's one at every game. He's called an official scorer or she. And you can sit there and you can go play by play down the scorecard and see exactly what happened in the game. So it's probably the easiest thing to check whether the Mets won 5-0.
How did the Giants lose to the
Um,
Yankees? Well, which game do you mean? They lost all their games to the Yankees. Well, let's just go with the last one. Well, Camilo Doval, the closer, gave up 4 runs. That's a good
that's
way to
not a
lose it.
closer.
If you're, it's a good point. Just
That's an
because we call
opener, in my
just
opinion.
because we called him the closer doesn't mean that he closed the game. No, he did not. He gave up 4 runs.
Yes, he without a doubt. Yeah, it wasn't a good. Now it was a good weekend for the Mariners. So at least one of the teams um, found success. They find themselves in first place. They swept the Angels, which I don't think is a hard thing to do these days. But they also, I think, took 2 out of 3 from the Astros, who came in before them. So they're hitting a stride right now. Uh, Fun to watch.
And they fired
And
their
they're,
hitting
and they're doing
instructor
it without, I mean, I think they get the lowest batting average in the league.
and one fewer batting coaches than they used to have.
Well, yeah, they fired the offensive coordinator. I'm
For an off,
sorry.
for an offensive coordinator guy, he wasn't that. All things considered, he wasn't that coordinated.
I'm sorry, man, but the fact that they called one of their coaches the offensive coordinator
By the way,
was a sign
that
of how
job's open.
ridiculous it was. They've almost got more coaches than players on that team.
Yeah, they still have two hitting instructors. Even though they
Yeah,
fired one, they
yeah.
still have two. They still have 2 guys doing the job of one.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure that one guy should be doing that job. I mean, you probably got a more valuable guy in your video operator who can sit down there with you and point out things that you're doing. Um,
That ball was outside. How do you know? I'm the video coordinator. I can see it's outside. Why
yeah,
couldn't
there's
you
also
see
a
it?
little box there. You reach for it. Your hands were, reversed or whatever it is. That, Carl, who used to be, his name is escaping me right now, but his
Carl Furillo.
no, the guy who was the video. I think he might have been the first video guy in the league, actually. A position that's become quite valuable now, but he spent hours in his room because I used to sit in there with him sometimes, and I'd watch him do his work. We'd talk. He was a great guy, and he was able to show players in slow motion and so on and so forth where what they were doing wrong, if they were over the ball, if they were under a pitch, what exactly they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy probably knew more about hitting than any hitting coach because he studied he saw everybody's tape, the good, the bad. Here's how this guy stands. Here's how that guy stands.
Do you
This
think
is
the
where
players
he
review
holds
those?
that.
Do you think they review that? They should, but I wonder if they do.
They used to with him. He would leave him. I believe he used to leave him a tape.
Check your
Matter of fact,
inbox.
he was so valuable to that team in 2001 that they actually took him on the road and his equipment on the road with them. I mean, he was every player that went through the Mariners that made good. And again, I'm not going to say that everybody listened to him or everybody even appreciated him. I think there were a lot of guys on the team that didn't appreciate him. But Carl did such a great job of giving them the opportunity to see where they were screwing it up. And if they wanted to take advantage of it,
and that really helps
they
when
could. He would sit with
when
somebody.
you're facing that pitcher again. You can review the last time. How did he get me out? How did he set me up? What did he open with? 75% of the time, is he going to open with a curve or a fastball?
Especially the bullpen guy, especially the relief pitchers, because chances are you're going to see a relief pitcher 2 times in a series.
Right.
So the information there was invaluable, and he could go. There were many times where, late in the game they were going to bring somebody in to pinch hit. So the guy who was going to pinch hit would, if you knew beforehand he was first up as pinch hitter for lefty, righty, whatever, Carl would have something ready for him. That he could look at well, this is what it looked like the last time he struck you out, or this is what you did the last time you faced him, or this is what he had all of that information there. God, I can't. It's really bothering me that I can't remember his last name. He was such a lovely guy, ex-Marine, and
Did he retire?
passed away.
He's seen a lot of bad batting.
Yeah,
Took its toll.
I think his son works. Carl Hamilton worked 21 years for the Mariners. He was just a lovely guy. His wife was a lovely person. I knew them both. I just always remembered how much he helped those guys and loved those. He loved baseball. He loved to see people successful. He used to show me stuff. Like I'd walk into his room, hey Carl, how you doing? Oh, come here, I want to show you something. And he'd show me stuff that he picked off of. Look for this tonight, or check that out, or look at this, or look at. I mean, he taught me a lot about hitting, things that I had never realized before, or aren't as apparent to you with a couple of beers in you as they are when you're looking at a video screen 10 hours a day. No, he was a stellar guy, and I don't know if there's a plaque or anything up in that ballpark that pays tribute to him, but there damn well ought to be. He was just he was that kind of guy,
and apparently knew more about hitting than many members of the active team.
Well, I think listen, I think that there's people that get their knowledge of something by doing it, and there's other people that get their knowledge of something by learning it. I'm never going to say that Carl Hamilton was a better hitting instructor than Tony Gwynn, but Hamilton could probably tell you how Tony Gwynn did it.
Or in many cases, what he didn't do. He didn't swing at the low and outside pitch.
Right.
If you didn't put it over the plate, he wasn't interested.
Right.
How did he know? He had an eye. But how does he know? He has experience, and he has the natural gift. And guys that hit, the best hitters do not swing at bad pitches. Or if they do, like Manny Sanguillen, they hit them.
Yeah.
That was out of the strike zone. Yeah, I still hit it to right. Good point.
Yeah, that was Ichiro's thing, man. Ichiro was maybe one of the best bad ball hitters I'd ever seen.
Because it was a good ball for him. It was something in his wheelhouse. It wasn't over the
because
plate.
He knew how to turn on that ball, how to move that, how to do what he wanted to with that bat.
Correct.
And he had the presence to be able to do it in a nanosecond. Which is what's going to make you a great hitter. Yeah. You threw him an outside low and away, in the late innings of a game. He was going to figure out a way, the time you chucked him that pitch, to hit that ball, to put it in play, to move runners over, to do what he needed to do. And sometimes it didn't work out. Sometimes it wound up being a ground ball to the shortstop.
Right.
And people used to say, oh, look at this guy. He should have just stood there and took that pitch. because it was ball 4. But I'm sorry, man. I never seen a guy with the ability to do that, to have that kind of bat control. I mean, that was in the league of Gwynn and Ted Williams. And another guy who was really good at that was Ricky Henderson. Who's the other guy that played for the Giants and the Mets? Butler, Brett Butler.
Mm-hmm. He's a slap hitter.
Yeah. He had the great combination. He had great 3 things. He was a lefty slap hitter that could get out of the box just as fast as anybody you'd ever seen. And he had unapproachable speed up that first base line. His theory, I think, was always put the ball in play. If you put the ball in play, things will happen.
And put pressure on the defense to throw you out. They know you're fast. They know that's how you hit. There's no secrets. Let them know that you're here to get on base, and it's up to them to stop you.
People commit so many errors in the game of baseball that they actually have it up on the scoreboard. I mean, let's face it. It's not an uncommon occurrence.
Giants have Arizona, but they don't have Blake Snell anymore. He hurt his abductor. He got time off for having a baby. Now he hurt himself again on the mound, striking out 7 Yankees, but couldn't finish the game. He's back on the injured list. And there's your $60 million man on off season.
Is he going to be gone for the rest of the season, or?
No, we're going to give him 10 days and see what happens. He struck out 7 Yankees.
Yeah,
but couldn't stay in the game.
Yeah, that's kind of been his MO, right? Is that he's always had trouble staying healthy. Yeah, it's no, I'm pretty proud of the Mariners and what they've done. The Mets are, I don't know what the hell's going on with the Mets.
Well, they had an angry, was it the infielder who said, oh no, it was the relief pitcher, wasn't it? He said,
yeah.
This is bullshit. So they DFA'd him. He said, this is no fun and this team is bullshit. And they said, well, then you're not on it anymore. We're going to designate you for further activity in the league. See if anybody else wants you. And I don't know if anybody claimed him.
Well, I think that I think there's only so much of that can go around, man. There's a lot of owners. I mean, I'm not that intimately familiar with the owner of the Mets to know what his tolerance is for people who talk out on his ball club. If he's one of those guys that are like a Steinbrenner or a Billy Martin, where, if you talk against us or you talk against me, you're talking against us. I think he might have been voicing frustrations of many people on the Mets right now to have this team that's number 1 in payroll and number 2 in payroll, and yet
struggling.
Struggling isn't even the right word for it. They're monumentally bad. They look like the 62 Mets. It's just nothing that will come together.
They have all team meeting, players only meeting. That's never a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, and it probably wasn't a good week to go up against the owner because he was told that he's not going to be able to build his casino out there in the parking lot where Shea Stadium used to sit. They told him, "No, we don't particularly like that idea.
Ain't going to happen."
I think there's a certain arrogance that comes with this guy, which is good, but it's also bad. But, I guess you get to a point when you own a major league team where you're paying somebody. I mean, what were they paying the two pros from Dover there. I almost said Dan Schatzeder. A blast from the past, but the two ex-Detroit pitchers that they brought over last year.
Scherzer and
Scherzer and Verlander. I mean, they paid those guys a hunk of money, man. They paid them more money than the Pirates making payroll.
don't forget Biff Sugarman. They brought him in.
And what did they do for that team? Nothing but badmouth them. I think it must be. Now, I've never had that much money, but it always pisses me off when if you give somebody money, they badmouth you after you give them that money.
Yeah.
And if they give you enough money to keep your great grandchildren and Air Jordans for their entire lives, it can be somewhat disconcerting to an owner who's writing those checks out.
It can be frustrating, yeah. And you're DFA'd before you finish your shower.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that happen on a few occasions. Like I said, it's never good to get the guy who pays you pissed off. In any shape, manner, or form of what they're trying to do. It's just it's just a joke.
Well, Vinnie,
yeah, you guys are.
Should we
you
gather?
guys are down in Arizona.
Yeah.
Playing the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Mets go down and play the Senators. The Mariners appear to have
2 weeks off. They give them 2 weeks off.
Yeah, I think because they swept the series, they get 2 weeks off. They go down to Oakland now and start Tuesday on a road trip. On Tuesday night down in Oakland, our guy's going to be pitching.
Who's our guy?
George. Oh, yeah. Kirby. I don't think he knows, but somehow I got to let him know that he's become our joke.
Send him a video he can watch in the dugout.
Oh, yeah.
Shall we gather on a wacky Wednesday?
Why don't we do that? We'll have more to talk about and less to think about, or more to think about and less to talk about, one way or the other. But we will gather and we will get together and we will do Wednesday.
Tomorrow's Tuesday. I have the day off, so I'm going shooting with Hunter Biden. We're going to buy a gun illegally, shoot up Monrovia where the bear was chasing the wolf.
I'm all trialed out, man. I don't give a crap what happens with Hunter Biden. I'm just all trialed out, man. I don't want to see another prosecutor, another courtroom sketch, another 5 box on the television.
Don't you want to see 5 lawyers sitting on a desk telling you what's next? Or how the cross-examination went, in their opinion?
No, Michael, because as I've always told you, you know why New York has all the muggers and San Francisco has all the lawyers?
Weather.
New York had first choice.
These are the jokes, folks.
Hang on to them. We're bringing them back. It's our classic joke. You could use that joke first appeared from the mouth of Jackie Leonard back in 1966 on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Whoa. He was a big man.
See, that's what we ought to do, Michael. We ought to do a segment every show of the classic joke of the day. And we reach back into the archives. We'll call it the
those stand-up comedians and those comedic teams of 2 guys where they talked a lot, but they didn't have any jokes. They didn't have a laugh line. They riffed, but it wasn't necessarily what you would call funny.
We'll call it the I'm Dickens, he's Fenster Library.
Which one of us is the smart one?
That's a good question. I don't know
Can't be.
either of
I don't
them.
think it.
I mean,
I don't think it
I guess
can't be
John
closer.
Aston was the smart one, right? And Marty Ingalls was kind of the goofy one.
Burns and Schreiber.
Schreiber was the goofy one. Burns was the smart one, but Burns developed kind of a tagline that he used on the Andy Griffith show that just annoyed me, and he brought it over into his stand-up act. Of he would do that annoying. How do I explain it? It was like somebody would say something and he'd go, yeah, 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 and it bothered the crap out of me.
It's supposed to be a
It
timing thing, but it wasn't
made
funny.
him unwatchable. But he was
It
one of the
was.
first people to put Larry David on the air. So
That's something. I don't know what, but it's something.
that's something he can always hang his hat on. Any other comedy teams you want to ask me about before we go?
Sandler and Young.
Sandler and Young. Well, they were that. They
Neither one of them was
incorporated a
funny.
lot of music into their deal.
Yeah, they were
You
showman.
know, yeah, they were kind of like Martin and Lewis. You had the one guy that could sing, and the other guy who was kind of goofy. Who was the? There was a duo that came out of Canada that I used to like. They did a piece called Baseball Shakespeare. Now I stumped myself, but they were pretty good. They didn't have too much music, but they had a pretty good comedy team. Is a tough thing, man. Now that we've done this for so long that you see some of the stuff that goes on around it. It must be really tough to have the timing and the everything that has to go on to do a comedy team. I mean, that's a lot of work, man.
Elaine May and Mike Nichols. That was an interesting comedy team.
Yeah, yeah. The Darlings of New York.
Yeah,
They always seem to be on some New York show.
Jack Parr or whoever the case may be.
Yeah, I think they were. I think they were the faves of Merv Griffin, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I think Merv Griffin had a. I always seem to remember them on Merv Griffin a lot. Then one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld is when Kramer buys the set. From the Merv Griffin show. All right, let's put this thing back together on Wednesday and see what happens. Thank you to everybody for watching us. We always appreciate it, and we'll be back here around 10:10 Wednesday morning if the Lord's will and the creek don't rise. Michael Knight.
And if you have to get a message to us, call Pizza Town and just tell them to get it to
Just
us
don't even
eventually.
call. Just go to Pizza Town, pull up in the parking lot, get yourself 2 slices with pepperoni and a bag of 3 Ziepler, and just sit there and enjoy Route 46, man.
For what it is, a little slice of America.
A little slice of America that won't be there.
Forever.
Forever. Eventually somebody's going to come along and develop that into something, but it's still standing with the people, the descendants of the people who first opened this place up. My father used to love this place, this Pizza Town. He would take us there. He would drive to New Jersey for the pizza. So that had to tell you something.
That takes a while to get there, depending on the traffic.
Yeah, but he wouldn't care. He'd go shoot through the tunnel or drive around the top the Washington Bridge. And I put it up there because a friend of mine's favorite pizza place closed yesterday.
In Seattle?
No, actually, it's in Detroit. This place called Capri that her father used to take her to when she was a little kid. And that was, the family's pizza place. and they had been there for years and years and years. Finally, they decided to retire, and they sold the place to somebody else, and they're going to change it. And it's never going to be the same. But those places are dying off. Those guys that came back from the war and got a GI loan and started a pizza place or a restaurant or something like that, and then handed it down to their kids. And now the kids are dying off. And so we're seeing these places that were established in the 50s and the 60s, but mostly in the middle 50s.
Yeah.
All going away. And Domino's
dominates.
Pretty soon that's all you'll be able to order is a Domino's or a Pizza Hut or a Little Caesars. But so if you know a little pizza, a local pizza place,
order a pie.
Go by and support them. Go buy something. Go buy a slice of pizza. The one I think about in Pittsburgh is Minio's. Best pizza I ever tasted anywhere. Anywhere. New York, California, you name the place, they have the best pizza anywhere.
Who knew?
Small little family operation.
Yep.
They got 2 stores. That's it. But they will send it to you.
Will they deliver?
By Federal Express.
Yeah, okay. That's it.
So if you're jonesing,
connect yourself.
Connect yourself. All right, Michael. Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby.
What a wine. See you Wednesday.
See you Wednesday, man. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.